Night Nation, I'm Trey Strelka. Welcome to the Sons of UCF Live. What is this? Around the Kingdom with Adam on assignment. I'm joined by the one, the only, Eric Lopez. Elo, hello.
Well, hello. Adam, where are you? Where'd you go?
How about my dramatic tease? Changes being made. Hosts out. New ones in. It was just Adam's got some business travel. And
is that the excuse
he never misses a show, Elo. So this is big.
So my conspiracy theory is I think he used work as an excuse just so he didn't have to talk about the Kansas game.
Yeah, and I feel like you and I talked about this on this week's Around the Kingdom. And, I'm hoping this hour we're expected to be joined by Chris Boyle of the Daytona Beach News Journal, Brandon Helwig of UCFsports.com, the rival site. Let's talk about this team at the halfway point, and maybe a little less on Kansas. Question, of course, Elo, Kansas, was that rock bottom? Do you think what we saw of this night's team now, 3 straight losses to open Big 12 play, 3-3 overall, is this rock bottom, giving up 399 yards rushing?
Boy, I hope so, because if not, then it's going to be a long year. It's going to be interesting. That was tough to watch, to just get beat up there on the ground. We've talked about it. Kansas did whatever they wanted to do. Trace, this is the stat I gave on Around the Kingdom. And by the way, we're going to plug that a lot, Around the Kingdom. 60 minutes. Did you say we got to go 60? I'm only.
This is 2 episodes of Around the Kingdom you're going to be joining.
But UCF in the 3 Big 12 games are averaging giving up over 300 yards on the ground. Trace,
that's not good.
That's not good. Not really good. And it's not like teams are running the wishbone against UCF. So to me, that was alarming and concerning. The good news is they have a bye. I think we all needed a bye. They needed a bye.
You think that's good for the team to go back to the drawing board? Certainly for coaches. You heard Gus Malzahn after the game in Kansas saying he was going to go back and look at all 3 phases. He was looking at everything. You think it comes at the opportune time for the Knights?
I think there's no choice. I think this team was reeling. And I said this. I think there was definitely a post-Baylor hangover there. When you lose the game like you did against Baylor, Trace, you're not going to – that's not just one you get over in 24 hours. I don't care who you are. I mean, I don't think I'll ever get over it, or anybody that was at the game will ever get over it. So I can't imagine the players just put that behind them. And what happened was Kansas jumped on them early, and I think it was like, here we go again. I think this team was reeling a little bit. I'm curious. You were there. I was not. I was watching on TV, and I was kind of traveling back and forth because I was at an assignment with the UCF soccer broadcast. What was the body language in that stadium for UCF? What was the sidelines like? Was it very down? Was there any energy? Because I didn't sense any of that on TV, but it's hard on TV. You had a great perspective being there at the press box.
You say that, but I don't know how much you pick up on the energy of the press box. Brandon Helwig may be able to tell you a little bit more because he was on the field. But what was unsettling for the team, you could tell, it was interesting, Kansas won the coin toss, elected to kick off, right, and put the Knights on offense. And then we've got the in and the out with John Rice Plumlee. And that was disruptive. I mean, they said, no, it wasn't ideal, but no excuses for that. But how could it not be disruptive for the team right off the bat? And I think that affected things just from the get-go.
Has to. And so I do think because of that, the bye week is good. They needed to regroup. I think that's and they got it. Whoever's banged up, John Rice, Plumlee, et cetera, whoever was banged up needed to regroup, get healthy. Problem is, the next opponent also has a bye week as well. So I'm not thrilled about who the next opponent is, as we'll get into. I would have preferred to be somebody like Cincinnati or something like that. But I do think this team needed badly a bye week because they needed to regroup from what's transpired the last 2 weeks.
And then you talk about that, just mentioning that next game is at Oklahoma, high noon Eastern. What's that guy's name that used to be on the Knights, the quarterback? Billy Gabriel.
Yeah.
A Heisman contender leads them to victory over Texas. Red River rivalry has put them in the spotlight. Maybe there's a little bit of a letdown. I can't imagine Oklahoma at home. The Knights have got to improve upon the rushing defense, and they have to limit the mistakes. I don't know where we're going to have a fully healthy John Rice Plumlee at that point. Obviously, going into a bye week, no coordinator interviews on Sunday, no Gus Malzahn on Monday. We've already been told this coming Sunday, no Darren Hinshaw, no Addison Williams. So the first we're going to hear from anybody since post-game in Kansas will be Gus Malzahn on Monday. in previewing the Oklahoma game. They have to play nearly a perfect game, don't they?
Yes, a clean, perfect game. It starts with stopping the run, like you mentioned, and offensively, don't turn the ball over and stay with the running game. I thought did you feel they got away like they panicked a little bit and threw too much in that Kansas game? I know they were trailing, but they had some success running the ball. This is not a team, in my opinion, regardless of who the quarterback is, Trace, that is going to air it out and win with the passing the football without the running it. I think this is a run first, pass second team to be successful, and they're getting beat on the time of possession, and that's concerning because Oklahoma is the most talented team they're going to see in the schedule. Oklahoma has the best wideouts they're going to see. Dillon had that big legendary drive to beat Texas, which, look, that's a big drive for him because obviously the knock on him was, can he win that big game? He never won a big game here, quote unquote, at UCF. That was a huge drive for him, and that might set him free the rest of the year. And they're coming off the bye. And, oh, by the way, Jeff Levy's the offensive coordinator there. I think he was interested in this job once upon a time. You could remind me if that's correct, Trace, on that.
Yeah,
so
imagine if Knights fans and certainly the players that were upset about it at the time, if you got everything you wished for, maybe Jeff Levy be the head coach. Let's go back on quarterback here, Dillon Gabriel aside. The talk there was, would we see John Rice Plumlee? In the article in which Gus Malzahn, had the in-bed with 24/7, and, that we were talking about maybe John Rice October 21 at Oklahoma. Suddenly he's out there. Let's listen to two sound bites, one from Gus Malzahn on the decision to play JRP, and as well JRP on why he came out of that game early at Kansas.
He was close going into the game, and I think when he got hit, it kind of tweaked it a little bit, and I think it scared him right there. And then we got the sideline, and they still said he was okay. And I said, "You sure?" And then, of course, he made 2 throws, and even one completion was a little behind Alec. I didn't feel really good at that point, and so that's the reason we went with Timmy. And
came to the conclusion that they think it was just scar tissue that kind of maybe a little snap, crackle, pop or something, and it's just scary, right? Like at the end of the day, like it's scary. You don't want to re-injure yourself or hurt yourself, and kind of scared me a little bit. But obviously, again, I don't want to be a detriment to the team.
Soundbite of the year contender at the halfway point. Snap, crackle, pop. John Rice Plumlee discovering what it felt like to experience some pain there and discomfort on the field at Kansas with his knee.
Yeah, I didn't look comfortable watching it. They probably – you asked Gus whether there was maybe could have waited another week, get that 2 weeks before the Oklahoma game. I wonder. It'll be interesting.
That was a good question. That was a fair question.
Fair, very fair. Unlike other questions you have.
A minute or two later, unfair.
Yeah,
unfair question.
So I'm curious if he's going to be healthy enough for the Oklahoma game. And to me, if he's got to be 100%. He's got to be 100% for him to be effective. He's one that needs his legs, Trace, to be effective. Some quarterbacks can get away with it, like Patrick Mahomes, obviously at the NFL when he was less than 100% last year in the playoffs. He could still be good. I don't believe John Rice Plumlee can be good unless he's not 100%. And I think if you're UCF, that's what I would consider in the next couple of weeks. I would not force it against Oklahoma. If he's not 100% healthy, I would not play him against Oklahoma.
Well, the argument there that's going to be debated for some time is, did they panic and force him into that Kansas game?
Yeah.
And to your point, we saw him when he was not himself at Tulane and down the stretch of the season, and he's not the same guy. He needs to use his legs, and for UCF really to have opportunity, unless the defense gives you a big turnaround, they're going to have to outscore teams. So you're going to need healthy quarterback that's producing. Let's talk about this a little bit more with Chris Boyle, UCF's beat reporter for the Daytona Beach News Journal, who joins us from where are you tonight? You look like you're at work. And
I'm not under the sea. I hate to disappoint everybody, but I'm actually in the press box at Daytona Stadium. So I'm going to be, if you see my eyes looking like a couple ping pong balls going back and forth, it's because I'm watching covering a high school football game while doing this. But I'm going to do my best.
Well, we appreciate you stealing away a few moments to talk with us. Let's talk about this John Rice Plumlee coming into the game, starting the game at Kansas. Did that surprise you? And is your sense of things that maybe this is a little panicky?
No, it didn't surprise me. I got confirmation the night before that was the plan that was going to happen after, Brett McMurphy had reported it. Friday evening. I did reach out to see if I could get it confirmed, and that was reported to me. So I wasn't surprised to see him out there. As for whether it's panicky, I'm not sure if that's the adjective I'd use, but it certainly felt as though that they really needed to win the game, that they were going to try to do everything possible to win that game in particular, that maybe had they won against Baylor, maybe they don't do that. Maybe they give Plumlee the extra week off. But right now it's about trying to put as many wins as you can on the board and, trying to give yourself the best chance possible to make a bowl game or to, maybe in their minds to win the conference. Obviously, we all know that that's not possible, but really, realistically at this point, it was to get as many opportunities to win and to get into a bowl game.
Are you of the mindset that this is a good time for UCF to have its bye week with the 3 straight losses, JRP not at 100%, some other guys out and injured, that this comes at an opportune time for them to kind of reset at 3-3 now?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. They couldn't have come at a much better time. I think it gives everybody a chance to kind of take a deep breath and realize that this is going to be a lot harder than anyone would have expected. The wins are going to be, you're going to need to play every second of 4 quarters to get a win in this league. And, the Baylor game certainly was a pretty harsh, cold reminder of that fact. But yeah, it potentially can get a few guys healthy. It's not just Plumlee. I mean, you got Ricky Barber, who's been, available but unavailable most of the last 3 games. You've got the Jordan Mask, who's banged up for a time. You've got a number of other starters on the offensive line. Caden Kittler has been missing, and they've been without Walter Yates against Kansas, and certainly that could have helped if they were able to have him out there to try to slow down the run game. But obviously, I think it certainly comes at a good time from a health standpoint, and then also from a mentality standpoint to try to collect themselves and make a real go of it here for the second half of the season.
Chris, I'm curious, at this point in the season here, 3-3, is this where you thought they would be? Did you think they'd be a little better? How would you grade UCF through the first 6 games?
So I had them at 4-2. I thought Baylor was the game they'd win, and kind of played out that way for all but for 41 minutes or so. No, I'm not really surprised actually as to what their record is. I thought Kansas State was going to be a really tough ask considering it was their first league game on the road. Kansas, I thought, was a much better team than people probably expected. They had almost all of their offensive production returning from a year ago. They have a lot of experience. They have a very unique style, and I picked Kansas to win that game. The only game that surprised me as far as just purely the win-loss result is Baylor. But I thought, for the most part, it's kind of played out how I'd expect. The second half of the year after Oklahoma, I don't want to say any game gets easier, but I think on the whole, the schedule lightens up a little bit. 3 of the final 5 games are at home, and they're playing teams that are not necessarily the upper echelon of the league, maybe except for, Texas Tech. I had predicted at the beginning of the year was in the upper echelon, and I've since been proven wrong in that fact.
You're not alone in the Texas Tech fan club there. Someone else on this show was
well,
a big
it's nice to know somebody's going down with the ship with me.
Mr. Raider. Let me ask you, so what is the biggest question you're curious to learn about this UCF team here in the second half of the year that you're curious, either positive or negative, here in the next second half of the year?
Can they stop the run? I think that's the question that everyone is. It's a fair question to ask. Is this scheme? Is this personnel? Is this permanent? They were absolutely woeful against Kansas. They were most of the plays that if you watch that game back, there's not anybody within 7 yards of the running back before contact's made. There were wide open holes. There were misalignments. There was and again, it's a question of whether it's talent or whether it's scheme. Something has to change for them because they're playing teams down the stretch that are run dominant teams. West Virginia certainly comes to mind. Cincinnati certainly comes to mind as far as teams that are effective running the football. So if they can't fix that problem, a core problem through the first 6 games of the year, certainly the last 3 that have come to a real head, then they're going to have a lot of struggles trying to win ball games.
Chris, as you know, in preseason camp, we get 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's stretching exercises, handoffs. We don't get to see much, but we heard a lot about the defense, especially the defensive line. Has this come as a surprise to you, just how ineffective they have been over the course of the first half of the season?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily the defensive line. I don't think they've been great, but to me, it's the linebackers and the safeties that have really struggled to tackle when given the opportunity. Ideally, you want your linemen to fill the holes, to penetrate if they can, but certainly to give your linebackers and your next level players a shot to come downhill and make a tackle, right? And there's just nobody there. There's nobody getting, filling the gaps. There's nobody making plays. And when the opportunities are there, there's just too many misses. I mean, I think it's 60 missed tackles this season, which is a ridiculous amount for just 6 games. So, at the end of the day, I think the defensive line has been okay. I don't think it's been as good as we expect. But again, you lose Barber, who's a huge part of what they do. And then, you factor in some of the guys I think that have been pretty good. Seliscar has been a good run defender. Tremont Morris-Brash has had a pretty good statistical year. Malachi Lawrence has looked effective when given the opportunities and as a pass rusher. And then John Walker, I think, has done a pretty good job as a true freshman. So there's bright points in the defensive line. It's that next level. It's the guys behind them, I think, that really have to improve.
Well, that Gus Malzahn doesn't often answer the question that is asked of him during his media availabilities. So I was surprised when he kind of answered yours when you asked him about the mixed bag when it came to the transfer portal. Has that surprised you that guys that have entered to UCF through the portal have not been more effective and more of a presence?
Yeah, and I think it's hurt them. Their depth is not as good as probably most of us anticipated it being. They brought in some guys that have played a lot of college football, and we haven't really seen a lot of them. Certainly Corey Gamage has been Marshall's leading receiver for a couple of seasons here. He's hardly seen the field. Sean Peterson had 6 sacks at FIU. He's played a little bit here, but we haven't really seen him make any impact plays. And I don't want to single anybody out here, but I'm just saying, these are the types of players they brought in to make an impact and to have a role, and they really haven't seen that. The only player I think that's really kind of stood out from the portal additions has been to Jordan Mask when he's been fully healthy, playing that nickel role. But other than that, I mean, it's they haven't gotten sort of the major impact that you might have expected when you looked at the names on paper coming into the season.
Chris, what do you make of the quarterbacks, Timmy McClain, his performances, and then the John Rice, obviously moving forward? What's your overall thoughts on the quarterback room moving forward? I just said if John Rice is not 100% healthy, and I know they cleared him, they said he was fine after the game, but he needs his legs, he needs everything to be 100% for him to be effective, in my opinion. To me, if he's less than 100%, don't play him against Oklahoma. Where do you stand on the whole quarterback situation?
So I don't know to me if Plumlee at 100% is necessarily the most important thing, because he's still got to finish the game too. He could be 100% to start the game, but he's exited quite a number of games before their conclusion too. So you have to take that into account as well. On the whole, I think the quarterback play has been all right. I think Plumlee looked really solid against Boise State before the injury. I thought that was one of his better games with the team. I think McClain has showed some real promise as a deep thrower, and there were a couple passes that you just look at and you're saying that's the kind of an elite level throw. The touchdown pass to Kobe Hudson in the second half against Kansas State, the touchdown pass to Javon Baker on that deep post against Baylor. I mean, those are really, really high level throws that he was able to execute. It's been the consistency, and it's been when the play is broken down, not getting rid of the ball, not just living to fight another down. It's taking those really big negative plays that have thrown UCF behind schedule. That's the big thing that I think needs to get cleaned up on that end.
I will put you on the hot seat here. Based on what you see now moving forward, I know what your prediction was before the season, but now what you know now, do you believe UCF will be a bowl team at the end of this season?
I know it's all panic and doom and gloom. Oh, everyone's saying they're going to go 3-9 now. They're not going to win a game until Gus is replaced, which is ludicrous. I still think they are going to be bowl eligible, whether it's 6-6, 7-5, or otherwise. I think that there's light at the end of this tunnel. I think there are games that they can win. having the home field advantage will certainly help for a few of these games. I think there's going to be energy at some point. I think they're going to have that lift. I think the West Virginia game, having the fans not being around to see a game for 3 weeks, they're certainly going to be up for that game. I don't think Houston's a particularly good team. I don't think Cincinnati's any more superior to them than they have been in past years. Although Nippert's not been a good place for UCF to go. So if they can win two of their remaining, think about it, if they win two of their remaining home games and they can steal one, then yeah, I think that they can definitely still be bowl eligible. There's opportunities there after Oklahoma.
Let's switch sports before we let you get back to work and all. Basketball, media day, midweek out at UCF. What were your big takeaways? What conversations did you have? Did you come away encouraged that the Knights may do better than 14th as projected by CBSSports.com?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the projection that the media poll is going to have too. I think it's going to be a huge transition for them too. Obviously, I mean the good news is that they're going to have a fairly comfortable non-conference that they don't have to leave the state. Like I think you pointed that out during the availability, which kind of surprised me that they're all their road games or their neutral site games are within the state of Florida. So that'll at least give them an opportunity to kind of settle in as a team and figure out what they're best at. But overall, I think that it's going to be really difficult. Let's not sugarcoat it. This is one of the best leagues in the country. You're playing arguably the team, the home opener in league plays arguably against the team that's favored to win the national championship. So this is going to be a real transition. If they can win, I think a realistic number, I don't know if you really want to put a number on it, but 4 or 5 games in conference play, I think is probably where you'd want to set the bar at. And then anything more than that's a bonus, if you ask me.
Were you encouraged by some of the conversations? And just talk about, you've got an article out now as part of your coverage for the Daytona Beach.
Yeah, I think the players understand it too. Jalen Sellers had a really good quote about it, saying something to the effect of like, well, there's nowhere to go but up. if there's no expectations, I mean, anything they do from here on out is going to be seen as a success. And for a team with a lot of new pieces and a roster that's been turned over, they seem to kind of all understand that, hey, look, we're going into this league, no one thinks we're good, so let's prove people wrong. I think there's a positive mentality, and there's something to be said of, a lack of expectations. Whereas on the flip side, I think there was maybe an overconfidence or some sense of hubris as how the football team would do because they've won so many games in recent years. That they'd walk in and all of a sudden be contending for the Big 12 championship. But I think most of us kind of looked around at each other and thought, probably not, but bowl eligibility would be a good first season for them.
What's your thoughts on Johnny Dawkins? And you got a chance obviously to see their part of the media day, but obviously you've covered it from afar, seen him. What's your thoughts on Coach Dawkins?
I haven't covered Johnny much. I think he's a really upbeat guy. I came away impressed with kind of his demeanor with not only the media, but obviously he's well respected and among the players based on what he was able to accomplish as a player himself. I haven't watched a ton of UCF basketball. I'm not going to try to make things up here as we go along. They've been close, right? They've had a lot of opportunities to take that next step since making the tournament, and it just hasn't worked out for them, and it's really kind of fallen apart when kind of in the grind of the conference season. That can't happen anymore because if you fall apart by the time January comes around, you're going to be looking at double-digit losses and piling up in a hurry. So I think that's the one thing for me is, can they sustain after January? Can this team continue to improve as opposed to fading away once the games get more difficult?
Is there a home game you're excited to cover more than any? Is it Kansas? Is it Baylor? Is there a game that you're got circled there? I'm trying to give Trace positive thoughts. I'm like, man, it's gonna be awesome to see these teams and Trace Grims, and he's kind of like starts getting nervous there because of what the result might be.
Trace's like default setting is nervous. I've learned this by sitting next to him in the press box for 18 months now. I think, you kind of have to say Kansas, right? It's the first Big 12 home game, and you're playing a team that historically is one of the pillars of the sport. You're one of the best teams in the country. whether you win, lose, or indifferent, I think if you're looking for an atmosphere, for a college basketball atmosphere, that'll be the night I think you're going to have the most, excitement level there. You're going to, the fans, the students, the fans will say, "Hey, look, we're playing Kansas tonight. Let's show up and make it hell for them." And I think that's going to be, at least for that one night, is going to be a lot of fun to see from a neutral point of view.
Chris, we'll let you get out of here, but first, how do folks follow you and your coverage of UCF athletics?
At Chris Boyle DBNJ, as you see here on the screen. Also go to www.news-journalonline.com. That's where our stories are. Our stories are free to read. All of our UCF coverage is not tucked behind a paywall, so take advantage of that if you can.
Thanks for hanging with us on Suns Live.
Thanks for having me.
All right, see you, Chris.
Take care.
All right, Elo, you heard Chris's perspective as we say goodbye to him. Elo helping me run the buttons tonight. See, this is what you get when you don't have Adam. Elo, there! Chris is gone.
I don't have the trigger like Adam does, all right?
Well, he's been there for a couple of years. You're doing great. You're doing great. You've got that StreamYard experience from the night shift as part of the Black and Gold Bannerets coverage, post-game coverage, so you're good with StreamYard. What do you make of what Chris was saying first about football? Just some of his comments.
Well, I think there's a good point about, we always go doom and, gloom and my goodness, like this team could still win some games, still get to a bowl game, get to 6, 7 wins is possible. I thought his question was fascinating. And the question is the struggles they've had on the defense, is it a personnel issue? Is it a scheme issue? I think that's
or as he said, a permanent
or
issue.
Is it a permanent issue? And I think that's a question that everybody is looking forward to finding out.
Including coaches,
fans, everybody. I think you're right. I think that's the biggest question that everybody has, and we'll see if we get some answers here after the bye.
Well, some football news as we move along in the show. Sold out. Knights now announcing that Houston game, the finale, is sold out. Hey, could be what gets them to bowl eligibility, maybe. Things line up. You never know how that's going to go going into that last game. It means their final 3 home games all officially announced as sellouts, so that's a good thing. We mentioned.
Remember, I thought people told me that the last game would not be a sellout. We needed the Cows, Trace.
Our new rival, right? Our rival, yeah. Houston space game. Right. Let's talk Big 12. We mentioned Dylan Gabriel earlier with a win over Texas. You and I have been talking about it on Around the Kingdom. Cheap plug there that. It looked like a Texas-Oklahoma. Maybe it will still, but certainly Oklahoma in the driver's seat. Let's turn things over now to Jeff Allen with our look around the Big 12.
One of the games to note in the Big 12 this week is currently in progress during this edition of Suns Live. It's the Dana Holgorsen Bowl, as his current team, Houston, faces off against his former team, West Virginia. The Cougs are 2-3 on the season and winless in conference in their inaugural season in the Big 12. And the vibe in H-Town is that frustration is mounting amongst the fan base with Holgorsen with their lackluster play and a 21-point loss to Texas Tech 2 weeks ago. The Mountaineers, meanwhile, are 4-1 on the season and sitting second in the conference at 2-0, a half game back of Oklahoma. Again, this game is in progress and the final score not yet available for this show, so check in later on your favorite app or website where you get your scores. Lots of buys this week, so the other 4 games on the Big 12 schedule look like this on Saturday. Iowa State and Cincinnati, 12 noon on FS1. Number 23, Kansas visits Oklahoma State, 3:30 on FS1. BYU visits TCU, 3:30 on ESPN. And Texas Tech entertains Kansas State, 7 o'clock on FS1. UCF, as you know, one of the bye teams this week, so I'm confident in my prediction they will not lose a game. Meanwhile, as we settle back in on Suns Live, you can tell by my Braves jersey that my attention is divided this evening. A quick shout out to my fellow combo UCF Braves fan at @thatgirl_Jackie on Twitter, whose emotional swings between disgust and elation during a game are priceless entertainment. With your Big 12 minutes, I'm Jeff Allen.
Braves shout out here, come on. What are we doing?
And as we approach the half, Houston trailing 10-7 to West Virginia. As you and I spoke before the show started, West Virginia running with some ease. Houston with a 9,900-yard kickoff return for touchdown. No one knows more, is that fair to say, Elo, than our next guest about UCF Sports, than Brandon Helwig, the publisher at UCFsports.com, the rival site. And as you mentioned at Media Day, it's not like we've ever gotten together on the same show before. Brandon, welcome in.
Yeah, I always enjoy being on the show. I don't know where Adam is tonight. I just think you're right. Kind of ducked out. He doesn't want to talk about the game. I mean, where is he?
Well, let me start off with this hard-hitting question. Okay, if you were a gambling man, who wins more Big 12 games, Gus Malzahn or Johnny Dawkins? We'll even throw Sidia Messer in there.
Jeez.
Yeehaw.
That's a great question. I was on the glass, almost 3/4 full. I was the optimist. I was, this was before we all, what was going to happen with John Rice getting banged up and stuff. But, everyone, I think when a season starts, maybe you get overly optimistic. And, I think the coaching staff, they were confident. I mean, they weren't entering this season just hoping they could eke out bowl eligibility. I think they felt they had a team that can make a run. I mean, I'm not saying that, they thought they were going to win a Big 12 championship, but I think they thought they had a team that would be competitive, that when you get to the final month of the season, you could still be in the mix for a championship. So to that end, who's going to win more? I still think UCF can get to 6 wins. I feel like that West Virginia game is kind of a must win, because if you don't win that one, I mean, we're assuming they're not going to beat Oklahoma, obviously. But if they can't win at home against West Virginia, you got to win 3 out of the last 4. But I think they'll find a way to at least go 6-6. Johnny Dawkins, I was listening to Chris Boyle. I mean, I pretty much agree with everything he said, but we'll see how basketball goes. I mean, I think CBS came out today, predicted UCF last. I know that's going to be the running theme here with all these preseason predictions, but who knows? These transfers come together. UCF may surprise, maybe they can win 5 or 6. Who knows? Okay. I don't ask me about basketball in January once we see these players play in the non-conference. I think it's a big blow, though. They had a really good player that was going to be on the team, Jaquan Walton. If you remember that, all those transfers that come in, he was on the team for like 2 weeks. And because he was a graduate transfer, he could bounce around as many schools as he wants. So Penny Hardaway in Memphis plucked him off, and he's going to be the starting lineup for Memphis. He's a really good player. I think I would have been a lot more optimistic had he had stuck around.
Earlier, Elo asked me what the view from the press box, if I could sense the body language of football at Kansas. And I said, from up there, hard to tell, that you'd be better to ask. What was your sense being down on the field and on the sidelines?
My sense is the only one that had energy was Terry Mahajer. He was, he's usually on the sidelines most of the game. That was a game that was very important to him. He has Kansas ties. People don't know, after I think he had his undergrad and played football at Arkansas State. After that, he went to Kansas. He was a GA. He was under in the Glenn Mason era at KU. Coached, the assistant offensive line coach for a few years, kind of got his start, in that way. And then athletics administration, he was associate athletic director there prior to becoming the Arkansas State AD. He met his wife at KU. Their daughter was on the sidelines as a dancer. If anyone watched my Sights and Sounds video and wonder why I kept on showing one particular dancer, that's because that's Terry's daughter. So it was a very important game for him. He was amped up for it. But it just seemed like it was a weird vibe. I mean, the whole atmosphere is a little off at Kansas. It's a little, it's not like Kansas State that we saw a couple weeks prior. Just it's kind of a dead crowd, even though it was mostly full. Just kind of some weird things they do in the stadium. And then with the whole flow of the game was just off. Okay, John Rice is going to start, but he's wearing a brace. Like, is he 100%? I mean, clearly he's not, but he's in a brace, but he's going to start. And then, his first couple plays, and I'm trying to get from one end of the field to another. And then the next thing I do, I'm looking at the field. I'm like, wait a minute, that's Timmy on this drive. Like, where'd John Rice go? I didn't even see it. Whatever that snap, crackle, pop, I'm running around, and I don't always have the best view, even though I'm on the field. Now, I was wondering what the heck was going on. I'm trying to load the game thread on UCFsports.com to see what happened to John Rice Plumlee. And, that was just a weird thing. I mean, just kind of like that kind of added to it, I think. I think Gus tried to kind of dismiss that a little bit after the game, but that had been jarring for the offense. Just, you think you're going in with John Rice. I don't know how the team really feels if it's not 100% John Rice, because we saw that at the end of the season last year, he was not nearly as effective. And then the whole switcheroo, and then McClain comes in. We're going to put John Rice in. I forgot was the third drive, whatever the drive he came back in, didn't do anything, and then they pulled him out entirely for the rest of the game. That was just a weird way to start it on offense. And then on defense, I wanted to see someone get angry. I wanted to see, players, getting after each other on the sidelines in the bench area. And one thing about Kansas is, their stands are right up against the bench, and it's poor visibility if you're in the first few rows, but there's a few UCF fans that, their 50-yard line, they're right up there. I mean, they're like literally 10 feet from the players. And, so I think Trace, I think you might know the person I'm talking to. I think you shared a flight with him on Sunday night, but I'd kind of come over to him during the game. Like I've been over on the end zone. Like, what's the bench area like? What's it like when the defense can't get off the field? Like, what are you seeing? And he just said, guys are just kind of going through the motions. I mean, I think he said Jaira Wilson, the safety transfer from ECU. He was trying to get the guys fired up, but it just it just seemed weird to me. It was just kind of a weird vibe. You would have thought guys would have been more angry or getting after it, and didn't really see that. I clearly, I think there's a hangover from Baylor that you just don't get over. You can talk about a 24-hour rule all you want. I mean, maybe as a coach, you got to try to emphasize that, but I don't think that's reality. I think, I don't know if UCF was beating Kansas anyway, but I certainly, I hope, was it 51-22 or whatever? Are they that? Is the run defense really this bad? I mean, I know they didn't look good at Kansas State, but I'm really concerned about that area right now.
Coming up an average of over 300 yards a game in Big 12 games, Brandon.
It's coming. It's coming. I mean, we saw what happened we saw a little bit against Boise, all right? I think the defense was able to get off the field, though. But, they had some success running the ball. But there was nothing to be, like, overly alarmed about as far as the defense, the first 3 weeks of the season. And then you go to Kansas State and just could not ever get a stop. I mean, just kept on running and running and running the ball. And so of course the Baylor meltdown in a lot of ways, I think their quarterback who came Shapen, he was not on, that game. I think there was there were some things happened in the first half that obviously played to UCF's advantage that, it should have been a more competitive game early on. And I think that kind of lulled everyone into a sense of complacency because he was not hitting those throws in the first half that he was making in the second half. So, and then we get to Kansas where if you're an offensive coordinator, you see what happened against Kansas State, you know exactly what to do. Run the ball until they can show they can stop it. UCF can't stop the run, like, at all. Well,
Brandon, I mean, the roster as well as anybody. You cover the recruiting landscape. You cover the transfer portal landscape. You know this roster inside out. We all heard the same thing from the coaches. They loved the defensive line before the season. They thought this was the strength of not only just defense, but possibly the team, if not the whole team. Obviously, the running back position was strong too. Do you think this is a talent personnel issue? Is this we're jumping to the Big 12, bigger competition? Or is there more to this story?
I'm not a coach, all right? I don't scheme. I don't come up with defensive game plans. I'm not sitting up in a box and can, be, at least have credibility criticizing coaching. But you got to wonder, is it scheme? I mean, is that a big part of it? UCF does have a first-year defensive coordinator in Addison Williams. He doesn't have a track record to go on to, been at other places where you can say this is a defense he's called and this is what he's done in this situation. So, it's brand new to him. It's brand new to us watching his defense. I know talent-wise, like you said, there was a lot of hype on this defensive line. I know Ricky Barber's been banged up, didn't play last week. I still think the defensive line has done okay. I think the defensive men struggled against the run against K-State, but linebacker, I mean, it is a weakness. I mean, linebacker, there's not any other than Jason Johnson. That's the only, reliable guy you got in there. They've been looking for answers, whether it was, Walter Yates, then he got banged up. Ryan Davis from Georgia's kind of been non-existent. Cam Moore's been in there. I mean, we knew that was going to be the weakness on that side of the ball, but it's not natural to give up 399 yards to Kansas, and that's the thing that kind of is maddening to me. And no one's jumping off the cliff here. No one. I mean, I know fans when they go to the extremes. On my board, Dungeon, Twitter. Fire Gus and this and that. Like, that's not happening. Gus is not on the hot seat. Okay.
You got a contract extension.
Exactly. That's. I mean, that's not the extreme, but it's also okay. And then I see a lot of narrative like, UCF just, they haven't been in, it's the first year in the Big 12 and the Power 5, and, it's going to take time, and then people are like, going into the season, I knew they were going to struggle. I knew it'd be a struggle with 6 wins, and all these, I don't know if I don't agree with that either. It's okay to say these are some really bad performances, because I don't think the coaches, if they were honest, if we talked to Gus and he kind of gave us, he wasn't expecting to come in and struggle at Kansas. I know they've turned it around. I mean, Lance Leipold's done a great job. He actually took over after Gus did in April or May of 2021, because they had that late AD and Les Miles kind of fall out, and so that was kind of a non-traditional coaching change timetable they had. But let's not act like Kansas is Oklahoma. If UCF goes to Oklahoma and gets run off the field against a team that's going to the SEC and has recruited, at a top 10 level for years, and is firing on all cylinders right now to be a top 5 team, or whatever they're ranked. I wouldn't. That would, even if UCF had a good team, that wouldn't shock me. Okay. But to go to Kansas and have that kind of effort, to kind of just be, you don't even look like you belong on the same field as they do, at least defensively. I mean, you can call a spade a spade. You can call a turd sandwich a turd sandwich, because that was.
6, maybe 7 games left in this season if they can make a bowl game. What do you think the legacy of John Rice Plumlee is at quarterback here? I mean, Gus has tied his fortunes, and there's been games he's been injured and missed, games he's left early. What do you think the legacy will be, especially in contrast to Dylan Gabriel in Oklahoma, Thomas Castellanos in Boston College, and of course Mikey Keene at Fresno State? That's
a tough one, because we don't. It really depends on how the season ends, but I mean, we can kind of see where it's going, right? I mean, he was. I don't think it's really been fair to him in a way. I mean, he came into UCF. He's looking for an opportunity to play quarterback. He didn't really get that with Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, and. I mean, let's be real. When that was Gus's guy in the transfer portal, they knew they needed a quarterback. They didn't. Mikey Keene is not the type of quarterback, regardless of Gator Slayer or whatever. He just kind of did enough in that game to distribute the ball. That's not the style of quarterback that Gus Malzahn wants in his offense. So I mean, I think everyone should have known that. JRP was going to be the starter going into last season. But there was, you guys know, there was a lot of controversy about that. Mikey Keene came back. I think the team supported Mikey Keene. He put in the work. He'd been there. They knew who he was. And I think you get that dynamic at a lot of places. You transfer portal, whether, guys on the team maybe support guys they know and their friends. And then, this guy's coming in trying to take a job or whatever. And they got a lot of, who knows? Like as you said, Trace, we don't see anything other than the, 10 minutes of stretching for maybe like twice a week, or maybe like twice a camp, actually, not twice a week. That would never happen. But we don't see anything in practice. But there's, buzz you hear. They shareholders get to go to a scrimmage, maybe hear from other people that might get access. And a lot of people thought Mikey Keene, won the job last year. And so that was a controversial thing that I always heard behind the scenes, that it's not like anyone was like, John Rice is a great guy, but, a lot of people on the team were rooting for Mikey. Then we see that Cincinnati game when he finally plays and he had that little, whatever he said to the camera. Remember that? In the slim chance he gets in this game today, he's going to F him up. I mean, that kind of adds to the Mikey Keene legacy. So that's kind of been working against John Rice, with the whole fan base and everybody else. So it's just, I feel bad for him, because I think, everyone talked about that he was going to take this huge, step up this year, working more closely with Darren Henshaw. And we saw it in that Boise game, and he got no help. I mean, there's passes they had to the receivers that just, got intercepted. Obviously not his fault, but then he gets hurt, and we haven't seen 100, and we may not see 100% John Rice, at least not for a few more weeks. So I don't know. I don't know how to. I don't even remember what you asked, but I'm rambling on. I just feel bad for him, because I think he was poised to have a really good year, and just the injury got in the way, and just I don't think we may never know how good John Rice Plumlee could have been.
All right, another on the spot question: is QB1 in 2024 on this roster now?
No, not at all. No.
Definitive. See,
I mean, honestly, and if coaches were being honest, if John Rice isn't 100% and you have a bye week, like, why even play him at Kansas? All right, that tells me they don't have confidence in Timmy McClain. Now, there's
Gus
a lot.
didn't like that question.
No,
though,
no.
did he?
Why would you say that, Trace? Well, he wouldn't. Yeah. But the thing with that Baylor game, I mean, you could point. There's like 10 things you can come up with of why if one play goes a different. If someone does something in that Baylor game, UCF wins. But I get the sense that they probably, at least offensively, they look at Timmy McClain like Randy Pittman's wide open for a touchdown. If you throw the ball, 2 seconds, before you do, and then when he threw it was intercepted. That was obviously a huge turning point when everything started to fall apart. But I'm sure they're kind of holding him responsible for that. He's done some good things in the games he's played, but those turnovers have been magnified. I mean, they harped on it when we talked to Henshaw after that Kansas State game. Those turnovers he made. I mean, obviously, no one's going to be happy with that, but I just think you saw, and then conversely, you saw John Rice, when the game was on the line, he went down there and took the ball down the field and won it, got it to the point where Colton Boomer could kick it to win it. And, Timmy McClain has had opportunities, with the game on his shoulder to do the same thing. And he hasn't been able to do it down the stretch. So I just think they just kind of, I don't know, panic's the right word, but, if he's cleared, then we have, we have the cover to put him back in, even though we know he's not 100% effective with his legs. But yeah, I think we've seen kind of how they react to that. That's why I don't think. Well, I mean, Dylan Risk. I'm taking that back. I think you were asking about is he on the roster. I think Dylan Risk has a chance to be that guy, but I fully expect them to go after another transfer. That's what's happening pretty much at almost every school right now. You need a player, you need a quarterback, you go find one in the portal. But so that's kind of my expectation. But I wouldn't completely rule out Dylan Risk, at least at some point in the future.
Well, they're going to talk about a former UCF quarterback next week, Dylan Gabriel. Gus is probably going to get asked about him on Monday. Dylan's going to get asked about UCF next week by the Oklahoma media, I'm sure, Brandon. What do you think next week's going to be like? Because I was trying to think if we've had a storyline like this when UCF football involved like this. I don't know. UCF basketball, Donnie Jones against UCF, but that's nothing comparable to this.
I wish this game was at home. I mean, just think of the reception and the bounce house. Dylan Gabriel coming back.
Does he get any cheers, or is it total booze?
Oh, it would just. I think other than maybe USF or something. I mean, I think it would be pretty remarkable the chorus of booze that that we would have heard. Unfortunately, we won't get to experience that, but that's going to be something because. Dylan Gabriel, I mean, he's fired up. I mean, it's his former team, and there was controversy kind of on how he left. And it's when you look at it, now a couple years later, it's kind of hard to kind of blame him. Just kind of, even with Mikey Keene last year, he didn't want to play and burn a red shirt. And, Dylan got hurt. Yeah, I mean, maybe they said he could have come back late in the season, but he didn't want to burn a year of eligibility when he knew how valuable that was for his future. So, it'll be interesting because I know Dylan's going to want to, do everything he can to put points on the board and kind of embarrass UCF. But the other thing, too, is Jeff Levy is the offensive coordinator. And we all know, when all of a sudden Heupel and Danny White, leave in the middle of the night, into January, whenever that was, like, oh, my gosh, UCF all of a sudden don't only just need an AD, they need a head coach. And there's a lot of support for Jeff Levy, a lot of boosters, a lot of people wanted him to be hired. He interviewed for the job. Looking back, obviously this was always Gus's job to turn down. And even if Gus, decided the time wasn't right, and if he wasn't interested or if he would have turned it down, I don't think Levy still would have got it. But Levy probably maybe thinks that he wants to show up. I think he's going to want to show up UCF brass and show, I'm the guy you should have hired. And they're going to do everything to embarrass this UCF defense. And with the defense reeling right now, I'm kind of worried about.
We're all a little worried. All right,
Yeah.
My last question will be on a positive note here. You've covered UCF since what, 99, 2000? You started covering on a basis here. Trace has been going to UCF games since he was a student, going back to 1990. I've been going to UCF games since 98. What's it been like for you, Brandon? You've traveled to Manhattan, you traveled to Lawrence, you're going to travel to Norman. What's it been like to see that Big 12 logo, those atmospheres? And we saw this at Media Day, even yesterday at the basketball media. It struck me walking on the court as we were talking to the players. Wow, there's the Big 12 logo. What's it been like for you as someone who's seen this program for all these different eras?
Yeah, it's been fun. I still don't know that it's really hit me yet. Kansas State kind of still felt like a non-conference game. I mean, it's a conference game, but it didn't feel until you get familiarity and maybe you play these teams more than once, or maybe there needs to be a little bit, get deeper into the schedule this year to kind of get that feeling. But it hadn't really, that game, it didn't sink in. And then we get to Kansas, and Kansas just had it's kind of a lame environment. I know they're overhauling their stadium. It's 1921, however old it is. It's kind of a dump, okay? And the atmosphere is kind of weird. I think they have basketball fans that don't know how to behave at football games. It was kind of a small time feel, even though it was mostly full. I mean, I give them credit for that. So that atmosphere just kind of wouldn't knock anyone's socks off. But yeah, I don't know if it's hit me yet. I think it'll be interesting once you get to basketball season, especially, and just kind of see these teams coming in on a weekly basis. First home game is going to be against Kansas. That's going to be remarkable. I don't know. It hasn't really hit me yet, I guess.
Brandon Helwig, publisher, UCFSports.com. Enjoy the bye weekend, watch some football, get away from it all. And then
I love these Thursday. I hope UCF gets Thursday, Friday games next year. Maybe Friday. I think I prefer Friday over Thursday. But I like you kind of get a bye, not like really a bye, but I like watching football on Saturday. I just feel like I've been disconnected because UCF plays on Saturday. I haven't been able to see as many other games as I usually get to. But we'll see what next year's schedule holds.
All right, thanks for joining us, Brandon. See you with Gus on Monday.
All right, take care, guys.
All righty. Good deal from Brandon Helwig. Let's go around the kingdom real quick. By the way, Elo, women's soccer, is this a good draw? They score first. Maggie Jenkins gives UCF the 1-0 lead. Texas Tech scores later. A 1-1 draw. Number 6, Texas Tech. Is that a good draw for the Knights?
Normally I would say yes. They had the lead. You would have liked them to hold on. They don't have a marquee win yet, Trace, for the resume, so that would have been big. You hope, that could have been their last time. They do go to BYU, who's a top 10 team at the end of the regular season, but that's at Provo. They might have needed a win there, honestly. But, draw is better than a loss. Well, hopefully that could be some momentum carry over here through the rest of the regular season in the Big 12 tournament after a disappointing home loss to Baylor last weekend.
Olivia Lewis leaves the game with an injury. The Knights have had injuries, have depleted their depth. It's senior night for the Knights. Of these seniors, 11 walk. Who will be most fondly remembered as part of this soccer program? Imagine goalkeeper Caroline Delisle.
Caroline Delisle adds to her the legacy of this great goalkeeping school that UCF has with the Alini Reyes and company. She's a 2-time American goalkeeper of the year, helped them get back to the NCAA tournament last year. She's the headliner from this one, and that'll be the big question for UCF women's soccer next year. Who replaces her at the goalkeeping spot?
Volleyball 15-2 overall, 6-0 after the sweep of West Virginia. But Elo, come on, it's about to get real, okay? Saturday, hosting Kansas State, kind of a murderer's row in the Big 12 down the stretch, as you have mentioned. Maybe the Knights just need to tread water here. They're well positioned with RPI.
No doubt, but to your point, it's going to get real soon. Their last 11 matches are going to be against top 50 RPI teams. UCF currently has 1 win against the top 50, which is that win against Florida State. That's why they're not ranked. I know people all of a sudden are like, why aren't they ranked? Here's an example. They swept West Virginia. They dropped 3 spots in the RPI to 34. That's how bad West Virginia. The tough part of the schedule. But the good news is, Trace, they can make or break their season. If they want to make the NCAA tournament, it's in their control. They win 4 or 5 of those matches, I think they're in the tournament.
Number 2, not in the Sun Belt, in the country, Elo. Number 2, United Soccer Coaches rankings. That's back-to-back second for men's soccer, 6-1-2 overall. They are at Old Dominion on Saturday and then return space game against Coastal Carolina. They've had the harder part of their schedule for the most part. A little bit easier down the stretch for them. They are well positioned from an RPI standpoint.
Top 3 in the RPI. Number 2, as you mentioned in the rankings. They just got to keep it going. They're at Old Dominion. The tricky spot now is don't fall into a trap where you get upset and that could drop you a bit. Because I think their RPI is going to drop a little bit based on the opponents they have left. And you have teams like from the ACC moving up. But right now, Scott Calabrese, who told me last week, this is the best defensive team that he's ever had at UCF men's soccer. How many times have we talked, Trace, over the years about their defense? Oh, they give up a goal. It'd be a 3-2 game back and forth. Not the case this year. That's why a lot of people think this team can make a run to the College Cup.
And this segment's called Around the Kingdom, which gives us an opportunity to talk about what did you call it? The fastest show that covers UCF Sports.
Fastest
30
UCF
minutes
show.
once
Yeah.
a week.
Not gonna lie, this has been a long show for me, but it's been the fastest 30 show every week. We hit up all the topics. UCF Sports, just like this, we tend to argue more in a much more constrained, quicker pace.
Well, I appreciate it. I have enjoyed. That's been the highlight of my sports year. Has been working with you on the Around the Kingdom. You know, you watch this show every week, Elo. What time is it, Elo?
Oh, let's let the man himself tell us.
It's that time again. Time to open the Brian W. Peterson Sons of UCF mailbag.
You haven't really lived, Elo, till you've seen him do it in person.
Listen,
so.
all the pressure. Adam told me, look, whatever you do, make sure you hit the Brian W. Peterson.
You don't have to bring in the guest. You don't have to bring in Trace.
Yeah, nobody there. Everybody, it's like, just hit that. Otherwise, it's a failure. So I'm glad that was the biggest goal for me.
Well, all right, let's get through these. At J.A. Hadaway, what the holy hell, man? I mean, what the hell? Geez, he's talking about the performance at Kansas, which we've talked about. J.P. Gilbert, friend of the program. UCF football is dead, says the never reactionary J.P. Who's listed first on the autopsy report under cause of death? Coach Gus Malzahn or Terry Mahajer? Put you on the spot with that one.
I don't know neither. I think it's a
too
little
soon.
premature.
Yeah. Robert, at 2 letters, 2 words. What was worse for the UCF brand in the eyes of the outside fan base? The collapse against Baylor that ended in a close score, or being utterly embarrassed by Kansas, put the huge number up on UCF? Which one's worse?
To me, it's the Baylor loss at home. It's the first ever.
Nobody saw it.
Not too many more saw the Kansas game because a lot of people tuned out by the second half. But blowouts happen. The Baylor game, that's a first Big 12 home game ever. And I do believe this. If they hold on and if they win that game, this whole tone of this program, it's totally different. I still think they may lose to Kansas, but I think it's a little more competitive. And we're feeling better at 4-2 than we are at 3-3. To me, it's the Baylor loss.
At Golden Knight _ the second, you can only pick one. Who deserves more blame for the debacle of this season so far? Coaches, players, administration, or for some weird reason, fans? Fans.
Sure, everybody. Let's just go. We win as a team, we lose as a team. Let's just blame everybody.
You got to throw the fans in there too. At Nightmares J, defense has given up 80 points, 915 yards. You mentioned the amount of rushing over these last 3 games. Is it time to move on from Addison Williams, or does he deserve a full season? Well, first of all, Gus isn't going to do that to his first-year defensive coordinator. So it's a non-starter. Now, let me ask you this. Could he be on the hot seat at the end of the season? A one and done for Addison Williams? I know we don't know how this turns out. I mean, they could just as easily be bowl eligible as anything, right?
I think it depends on what the coaches decide. At the end of the year, do they think this was a personnel issue or was the personnel fine? I think there's a bit of an issue with the personnel myself. So I mean, one and done. Look, when he got promoted, everybody was excited about the move, and he's a great recruiter. I don't think he's one. And I think some of the covers bear it, particularly in linebacker.
At Night Fan 94, we tangle all the time about this. If UCF could go undefeated the remainder of the schedule, but it cost you a Citronaut rebrand, would you be on board? Let me duck this question because since that question. What do you think of the space jerseys? What'd you think of the?
I thought FIU did a great. Oh, you mean UCF? I'm sorry. I couldn't tell apart. Look, why are we Tar Heel blue? How did that work out for UCF baseball this past year, Trace?
How did it work out for soccer, women's soccer last week? Right?
Yeah, they lost their game in that. We're not a Tar Heel blue school. I'm just saying. I like last year's space jersey. Anyway.
Night Fan 94 with another one. How would you rate the general UCF fan reaction to the current state of play and coaching? 1, totally normal level of UCF fan overreaction, or 10, fan base is unhinged even beyond normal?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to say in the middle. I think they're a little unhinged, but I don't think it's like 2015 was pretty dark, as you would know very well. Yeah. That was dark. Yeah. That was DEFCON 10.
Another one from Night Fan 94, because sometimes I miss his questions if he sends them in late, so I'm giving him the full 3 that he's asked this week. If you could pick any UCF Twitter personality to ask Gus a question at a presser, who would it be? Oh, I'd love to see J.P. Gilbert. I'd love to see him ask some of these questions that he likes to throw out on Twitter. What about you?
I'd like to get JP's thoughts on the women's basketball team. I didn't see him at media day. Personality. Brian W. Peterson. I'd love to see him ask him. I think he would have some interesting questions.
At Randy Polito, after taking 3 losses 3 different ways in the first 3 games of Big 12 competition, question is this: were any of these games the opening shot in a new grudge match rivalry? Are the Bears, the Wildcats, or Jayhawks on their way to becoming the new Cows? Too soon. One game. Baylor, though, at least equals the slate, right?
Oh, Baylor history now, because you had the Fiesta Bowl win, and now Baylor, in their minds, kind of even to score with the biggest comeback in program history against UCF. So, next year, if we're playing Baylor in Waco, this highlights of this game and the Fiesta Bowl will be constantly. So I think Baylor by far.
At Emptiness 4, Michael asking, how's UCF Mike handling his Twitter suspension? Boy, it's been quieter all week without UCF Mike. And I don't know what he did. He may not know what he did. I don't know how you get back in once you're out.
He's a Giants fan, and it's been a tough time for him.
Yeah. Michael's other question, are fans overreacting to the results? First year, new conference. Somebody said bowl eligible will be good enough. I think it's the fans that say 9-3, 10-2, conference championship game. But, it's also the way they lost Baylor. And as Brandon mentioned, Kansas, 400 yards rushing. Kansas, they have not looked good in this stretch.
That's how it is. If you lose, but you played well, hey, like Kansas State, I thought a lot of the fans handled that one pretty well. The Baylor one was rough, and then Kansas was a carryover. I know fans get a bad rap about it. I love the passion, and I think that's a good thing to have, and they want the team to do well.
At Rejoice Nights, what are the positive takeaways so far this season? This was a segment on Around the Kingdom. It wasn't about the season, but it was about the Kansas game. We allotted 2 minutes. We went 20 seconds.
The positive is I got to meet Adam Eaton in person during the Baylor game. That's my positive. And the running, John Walker's a big positive, right?
Yeah.
Like defensive line. He's the future of the defensive line. It may not be this year, but I think he's one of the pieces that's part of the solution moving forward.
At Mark Kruger 7, any insight to the strange use or lack of use of Amari at wide receiver? There's a lot of guys that we thought we would see more of that we haven't. You got to imagine it's just their abilities, right? Their talent, what they're showing in practice. If they could be playing, but that's going to be interesting to see if they shake up the roster any, especially on defense. Are the best guys out on the field right now? You got better guys on the bench?
Well, I think we're going to find out, and that's the beauty of the bye week. We're going to see what they feel like is some of the solutions in their minds. Do we see a lot of changes? Do we see some changes? Do we see tweaks? That's going to be interesting.
Manny Amoras, what are some good excuses for bailing on traveling to the OU game next weekend? Don't bail, Manny. Come on. You get to see the Knights at Oklahoma.
Well, and you get to see one of the great venues for college football and a great program like Oklahoma. I mean, they're moving to the SEC. This is a one and done more than likely. You'll probably never go play at Oklahoma again. So from a fan experience, I would take it from that approach.
How about I save this question for Around the Kingdom at _. Every coach we've had before Gus did more but less. Can Gus be successful with less than SEC level talent? Let's not answer that one. Let's save that as a possible topic on Tuesday. At UCF Nights, a lot of letters in there. If you were Gus right now, what would you do to fix the team? Scheme, personnel, play calling? Yes, all of it. All of it. Everything's on the table. Strength of spear, as well as Raphael asking bowl eligibility. Does UCF become bowl eligible? Are there 3 more wins in this team? And if so, which ones? You still got to win these games at home. Got to steal something on the road. Cincinnati's the best one to steal on the road.
Yeah, Cincinnati's your best shot to win on the road. If you can win Cincinnati, beat Houston, and then split West Virginia and Oklahoma State, you're a bowl team. And I think they're capable of doing that. They got to stop the run, Trace. That's the most – I know it sounds basic. If they can't stop the run, it's going to be hard to win games.
Or how about not give up 400? How about give up 200? And how about not give up 2 100-plus yard rushers? How about stick to 1? At Sir_Fallen Merc 7, what's more likely, UCF winning a natty in men's soccer or beating OU next week? I like the men's soccer chances.
Men's soccer, the NCAA tournament, when it comes to men's soccer, 48-team field, it's as wide open as it gets. There's no such thing as Power 5. It's anybody's game.
At Brian W. Peterson, better chance of winning the Powerball or UCF beating OU next week? The odds are astronomical for winning the Powerball. So Maybe that's a better chance. And this one's in your wheelhouse, Elo. At Heldago_Ox, talking about women's golf. What do we think about this women's golf? Doing a lot better than men's golf to start the season.
No doubt. Emily Marin, shout out, head coach, women's golf, doing a great job. Top 15 in the country. Looking ahead to the spring, because I know some people are kind of nervous about the basketball, how that could work out. 3 programs to watch in the spring: golf, women's golf, track and field, and, well, of course, softball.
Softball. I knew you would mention that.
We can't do an hour show without me. I got to mention softball at some point in an hour.
And our friend at Lonely Bee UCF, which in sing song should replace Frankie Valli's song. I had to go back and look through the list of titles. How about Tearing Up My Heart? Because that's certainly how it feels to be a night.
That would have been appropriate for the end of the Baylor game, for sure.
Elo, have you enjoyed this hour of Sons of UCF?
I mean, I tell you, it's after doing Around the Kingdom, this is I got to tell you, I appreciate it, folks. Hopefully, everybody appreciates what Adam Eaton does behind the scenes. I've been filling his shoes tonight. It is big. What he does, and you can speak to this better, Trace, what he does behind the scenes for Sons of UCF. Don't take it for granted, folks, what Adam Eaton does. So I want to give a shout out to him. He'll be back here. Trust me. Come back soon, Adam. But it's been a pleasure. It's been fun.
And, we joke all the time about Sons Plus. After we recorded Around the Kingdom, you were like, well, why can't you run StreamYard? And what did I say? I went, I don't want to. I just don't want to do it because I did it one time. It's very stressful. I appreciate you stepping in not only to work the behind the scenes, but to join me in this show for the last hour. Chris Boyle, Daytona Beach News Journal, good enough to stop by while working in the press box covering high school football. And of course, Brandon Helwig, great insights from him. It's the halfway point of the season. We love UCF football so much. We look forward to it. Let's see if we can cheer on the Knights down the stretch and have a good second half of the season. Elo, I'll see you somewhere, but certainly on Around the Kingdom next week. For Elo, I'm Trace Trelko. Go Knights!
Charge on.